Good afternoon, Collaboration Group 6. My name is Brian Lang, and this is my video on unions. We're supposed to read the article in case provided. I found the article. I don't know if it's also the case or if that's supposed to be separate, but I've read everything that was attached, and we're just supposed to discuss everything we know about unions. What a union is a group of workers who the official term is a group of workers who join together to influence the nature of their employment. Sorry, tongue twisters today. Anyway, I learned a lot about unions that I didn't know before. I thought unions that actually hadn't been around in quite a while. Surprised to find out that they are. I would be for unions for the most part. I have seen that that unions could get very bad. And we're supposed to discuss here if we are faced with a situation in an employment setting, what I would expect. There's no specific situation written out, so what I'm guessing that I'm supposed to be explaining to you is what I'd expect if I found a union in a job that I was going into. And so with managing a business, I don't know how a union for managers would work necessarily. I feel like if anything, I'd be more the employer view than the employee view. But if I were to come into it as an employee for, say, a engineering job, we're gonna go with, I would expect to come in and I would expect the union to be very hospitable and really helpful. They'd be absolutely adamant about me joining them, but I wouldn't want them to be pushy. Because from what I've read, I understand that some unions can get very uptight, and some people can't actually join certain jobs without signing something for a union saying you're going to be in our union and no one else's union. And that's really over the top when the union starts actually controlling the job rather than helping you expand it. So I wouldn't want that, but I understand that could happen. And anyway, I'm rambling. I apologize. So yes, typically before a union, I just don't want to be in a union that takes too much power over the job. Now, as for facts from the employer and employee views to each, one thing I didn't know from the employer view is TIPS, which stands for Threaten, Interrogate, Persuade, and Spy. I did not know there was actually any guidelines for what an employer could not do in regards to unions and their employees. That was very interesting because I had even considered employers. I knew they could threaten people hey, don't join this union or else I'm going to come after you. I got that, but I didn't realize how in depth they could go about getting you to not join a union or go around it per se. Another thing I didn't know is that lockouts existed. It's kind of a employer version of a strike. It's almost like they're initiating a strike on their own, kind of. The specific definition is if parties cannot agree on a contract, an employer may legally lock out its employees in order to put economic pressure on a union to settle a contract on terms favorable to the employees. They can temporarily replace workers with other workers. They can't do it permanently unless something that gets agreed on with the union says otherwise. But that was very interesting to me. And those were my two employer view facts that I didn't know about. As far as the employees go, I never knew that different types of strikes existed. I knew that strikes existed. You read about it in history books, but I didn't know that there was very specific differences between strikes. I just kind of assumed strike was a strike, but there are unfair labor practices strikes, economic strikes, unprotected strikes, which covers almost all of the illegal types of strikes that there are, sympathy strikes, and intermittent strikes. And after I read about sympathy strikes with the whole race movement back in I want to say 70s, sympathy strikes I was aware of. I just didn't know that I was aware of it. But my other employee view fact was that I didn't know fast-growing unions still existed today. I thought, if anything, unions are dying off. And percentage-wise, they are going down. But there are unions still coming into fruition, per se. And the professions that those most typically cover are physicians, nuclear engineers, psychologists, and judges. Now, nuclear engineers really surprised me because something as crazy, complicated, and important as a nuclear engineer, I wouldn't think they'd have to fight too much for any kind of job rights. I think people would be willing to pay them or give them whatever they want to get them to work on nuclear engineering, but they don't. Apparently they really need the help. So that was impressive. This has been my video on unions and things I did and didn't know about them. And thank you for listening.